Hello and welcome back to the Cracking Fan YouTube channel. Today I want to make a video about a piece of Meta's engineering culture. There really aren't many of these videos online, and I figured it might be interesting for people looking to work at Meta one day to understand how things are on the inside. The topic I want to cover today is the RFC document. RFC stands for Request for Comment. And this is a document that you put together when you want to make a change to an existing system or have some new idea to pitch. Before we get into the video, I just want to take a second to shout out our channel members. Thank you for your ongoing support and monetary patronage of the channel. It's really appreciated, and I'm glad to have you as part of the community. If you want to join our community, the easiest way to do so is by joining the Discord with the link in the description below. You can also choose to become a channel member if you want to support my work monetarily. Okay, enough of that, let's get into the topic. So, what is an RFC doc anyway? As mentioned earlier, an RFC doc is a document that you put together when proposing a new idea or a change to an existing system, right? And this is a pretty standard process at Meta when engineers want to introduce some non-trivial changes. If it's really simple, you just code it up, put it up for review. You don't really need to write an RFC doc. But why do we actually write these RFC documents? Well, doesn't it slow down the development process if you're constantly needing to write a document whenever you want to make a change? I thought Meta was all about move fast and break things. Well, what's the deal here? Well, like I just mentioned, RFCs are not for every single change that you want to make. Obviously, that would be an extremely tedious process and slow things down on the development side drastically. Typically, we write an RFC document when we want to introduce a change into a system that is either not our own, or if it is our own, then the change is actually quite meaty. So, the rationale here is as follows. If you want to make a change in someone else's code base, you are free to do so. At Meta, anyone can touch any piece of code. But, and this is a big but, you should align with the owners here to make sure that what you're proposing will actually fit into the existing system without breaking things. You also need to explain the rationale and the benefits of making this change. If you rush into writing some code and just throw up a diff for review, yes, the team can maybe get a sense of what you want to do from the code itself, but this is not a good practice. And typically this is the behavior of more junior engineers because they don't necessarily think bigger than the task scope itself, and they're not really considering the implications of their code. We typically want to have the maintainers of a given code base be involved in the process and get their feedback and ideas. Chances are, if you're working in someone else's code base, then you don't have a complete view or understanding of how everything works there. And there's going to be blind spots that you may not have considered or vital assumptions that you violated. Even if the change is in your own code base, and you perhaps have a better understanding of the system, you still want to get the input of the senior engineers on the team or the tech lead on the team before you actually try to land a very large change. Working at Meta is a highly collaborative process, and it's part of the culture to get the input of different people when suggesting a large change to ensure that you actually aren't missing any key details or will actually break something unintentionally. Now that we understand what an RFC doc is and why we write them, let's discuss what goes into it and how we actually go about writing them. The first stage is to come up with some idea about a change that you want to make to a part of a codebase. The change is typically not straightforward, so you want to write down some ideas about the change. And we'll normally start the process in a Google Doc and write the following things. The first part is a simple TLDR section. It's good practice to just include a too long didn't read so people can very quickly understand what you're proposing. The second part is the formal proposal summary. This is where you're going to lay out what you're looking to make and at a high level the goals you'd like to achieve by implementing it. The next part is to briefly explain what the status quo is. What is the current system? How does it operate? What is the problem with it? And why is it potentially not as optimal as it could be, and how your change would affect the status quo? The next part is the technical details, and this is where you'll actually go into the technical implementation details of your proposed change. Which part of the system would you alter? Which things do you need to change? How will this be done in the code? And or what are the technical trade-offs that you made in your design? It's also good to include mock-ups or diagrams of how the new system would look after making the change, how data might flow through your new system, or if it's a UI change, what the new UI might look like and what the new user flow would be to help guide people as to what the kind of end product of your change would be. The next step, and this is quite important, is to talk about the risks. It's also quite good, where applicable of course, to list out what the known risks are associated with making this change. In most cases, if the change is quite big enough to warrant an RFC in the first place and a subsequent discussion, then it's not trivial and it may have some side effects. It's good practice to list these out, how you're consciously mitigating or tracking these risks, and what your plan for rolling back the changes if things truly do go wrong. Do you have some sort of metrics and countermetrics in place to keep an eye on how the change is affecting the performance of your system or the user experience? Do you anticipate that this change could potentially degrade these? It's good to call these out and make other people aware. Also, this is the section where you talk about how you actually will roll back your code if something goes wrong. Will you perhaps just roll it out to a small subset of users, make a decision based on the data, and then determine whether you should roll it out more broadly? Or maybe you'll add a kill switch to actually quickly revert things if it goes wrong. The last section is potential wins or benefits of making this change. On the opposite side to the risks, we also like to write a bit about what the potential win here could be if we make this change. Do we anticipate certain metrics to move in a favorable direction, for the user experience to be better on our app, or something like that? Obviously, there needs to be an end goal as to why you are looking to make this change and what you're looking to achieve with it. And this is the section where you'd make it clear what that desired outcome is. So those are typically the sections that you'll see in an RFC. Just to summarize, we have a simple TLDR for the people who, just want to skim it. Then we have the quick proposal summary. Then we have what the status quo is. Then the technical details of your change. This is the most meaty portion and where you'll spend the most time writing. Then what the risks are associated with this change and what the benefits/potential wins are. Once you've actually written the RFC document, typically you're now ready to share it with your partner team or teams to get their feedback. For some junior engineers, they may opt to share it with their tech lead first to get some feedback and clean things up before sending it out. Once the document has been shared with partners, the process usually goes as follows. They will read the proposal, make some comments, suggest changes, and overall critique your proposal. You'll then go back and forth with them to update your proposal and ultimately converge on an outcome. And ultimately, they'll either ask you to hold off on your change because they don't feel like it's appropriate or there's not enough information, or they'll give you the green light and you can actually start coding. So, in a nutshell, that's the idea around RFCs at Meta. These are an important part of our engineering culture, and you'll actually find that the more senior you get, the more of this so-called Google Docs engineering you'll end up doing. Similar to how in an interview, you never really just jump straight into a solution without going through the requirements gathering phase, the same is true for implementing big features. You need to get the input of other engineers when making a big change, and RFC docs are the way to accomplish this. Once you join the company, you'll notice these documents everywhere, especially in internal workplace groups. It's a very important skill to learn, and you'll likely write many of these during your time at Meta, especially the more senior you get. It's just a basic expectation of the role. Anyway, that's all the time I have for today. If you enjoyed this video and found it informative, why not leave a like, a comment, and a subscription to the channel? It would help me out a ton with the YouTube algorithm and help the channel grow. You can also join our Discord community with the link in the description below, and optionally become a channel member if you want to monetarily support my work. If there's any piece of Meta's culture you'd like some more insight into, let me know in the comments section down below. I might just make it the topic of the next video. Thanks again for watching to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.